5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and liftoff. The rise of Starliner and a new era in human spaceflight. Clear the tower.
Welcome to Your Space Journey, where we venture into the future of space exploration and the incredible leaders who are taking us there. Here's your host, Chuck Fields.
Hello, thanks for joining me today for Your Space Journey. In today's episode, we're going to go behind the scenes at the recent Boeing Starliner mission that was on December 20th, 2019. But before we go there, I want to start our special segment called Your Space Journey, where we share stories of fans and listeners and viewers like you, telling how they got interested in space and what they're most excited about. And today it's my privilege to introduce my friend, John Reno of John Reno Photography.
Hi, my name is John Reno. I do photography, and over the last few years I've started focusing on astrophotography and rocket launch photography. My earliest memories are of working on an Apollo project for school in either kindergarten or first grade, and as far as I can remember, I was already interested in space at that point. I was fascinated by the space shuttle, which was really prominent when I was growing up. My journey continued as I got older, and I discovered Cosmos, and it really reignited my curiosity. It brought back that spark that was so important when I was a kid, and I'd been doing photography for a very, very long time, and it became important to me that I figure out ways to blend photography with my other passions. I do a lot of concerts. I love connecting with people, and when I work with rockets, when I work with space, everyone that I meet is equally as passionate as I am about space, if not more so. Space offers opportunities for everyone, no matter what your passions are, no matter where you see yourself in the future. There will be opportunities for humans in space, for all walks of life. As a photographer, one of my primary goals really is to photograph in space, whether it be in Earth orbit, on the moon, Mars, elsewhere in the solar system, maybe even beyond the solar system. Who really knows? My goal is to leave the planet and photograph things that no one's ever photographed before. Maybe robots have, but no humans, so I'd like to go and put my own spin on it.
Your Space Journey.
Thanks, John, for sharing your story. Couldn't agree with you more. Space is for everybody. If you'd like to share your space story with us, just leave us a voicemail at 317-862-4700, or you can email us your audio or video clip. Just send that to info@yourspacjourney.com. Now on to today's amazing topic. I am so privileged to share our behind-the-scenes look at the Boeing Starliner CST-100 Orbital flight test. As you may know, this was a milestone launch for NASA's Commercial Crew program. Boeing had previously conducted a successful pad abort test for Starliner in early November 2019. This orbital flight test on December 20th, 2019 was successful in that it launched and returned safely 2 days later. However, the Starliner spacecraft, now named Calypso, was unable to dock with the International Space Station as planned. Over the next few minutes in this program, we're going to discuss our incredible experience behind the scenes of this amazing mission as attendees of the NASA Social Program. I've invited my new friend, Jason Fields, who also attended, to discuss this incredible experience.
Your Space Journey.
Hey, Jason, thanks so much for joining me today. Really appreciate it.
Hi, thanks for having me, Chuck. I appreciate it. Letting me be here.
My pleasure. Now, this was your first NASA social, and that just really impressed me. I was wondering, though, there's a lot of space enthusiasts out there, and based on the content of this particular program, I'm assuming they're interested in space. So I would like you to just tell me about what drew you to the NASA social program and what you thought it was at first that made you decide to apply.
Well, I had a couple of acquaintances that had been involved and went to one in the past. It was several years ago, so I don't remember exactly which one, but they kind of told me, what the gist of it was. And, specifically for the last few years, I've been following the space program pretty regularly. And there's an opportunity to get a backstage view of what's going on over there at the Space Center. And, I'm 100 miles from my front door to Kennedy Space Center. So
Wow.
I said, I'll go check it out if I'm selected. And I honestly didn't think I would be selected. I didn't know what the criteria were they were looking at. I had a captive audience with a podcast I'm involved with. But other than that, I wasn't sure what the selection process was like.
I totally agree with you on that, because I think a lot of people think, oh, they've got to have all this, I guess, experience or following, like huge amount of followers or in social media and that. And you really don't. I mean, I think that's the neat thing about NASA socials is that they select a diverse group of audience. And yes, some of them, my gosh, they have really popular YouTube channels.
Right.
Others are teachers. But there's also common folk out there. And when I first applied, that's what I was too. I was like, man, how can I do to get in? So
Right.
What was really neat about this is, of course, they get several hundred applicants, and it's not just done at Kennedy Space Center. They're done NASA's all over the country.
Right.
Shoot, I think even Europe has their own versions of their space social programs for the European Space Agency, I think. But several hundred people apply. 40 people were selected for this wonderful Boeing Starliner mission that we were on. And of all things, you and I having the same last name, I thought was kind of fun. But I thought it was funny too when I got on the bus, and we don't have to sit in any order. We don't know who anyone is. And I just went up and sat next to you and said, "Hey, I'm Chuck Fields." And you, "Hey, I'm Jason Fields." Oh, no, what are the chances of that? So
yeah, man, it's kind of crazy how it happened. I was on the bus first, and then the crowd was kind of filling in, and there were, minimal seats left, and it was your time. I had saw your name on the list when they were giving us our credentials, and I thought to myself, that's kind of odd that there's two people with the same last name.
Yeah.
I don't meet a lot of people with our last name, and but anyway, when you introduced yourself, and I was like, man, that's so coincidental that and it was great. We hit it off, and we had good conversations all day, on the bus. We traveled all over the KSC, on the bus.
It was really awesome. And I think one of the things that really blew me away, and I'm sure it did too, I'd love to get your impression on this, but one of the first things that we went to was the Boeing presentation. And folks, they really treated us really well that day. It was just amazing, the organization of this entire event. But of course, it was about the Boeing Starliner mission, and we were treated our first presentation with two wonderful folks from Boeing. We had Melanie Weber and Louis Atchison. I was wondering if you could just tell us a bit more about what your impression was of their presentation.
Sure. I thought that part of it was incredible. I kind of expected, I did a little homework before I went on this social. I kind of had an idea that they would give us a mission overview probably early on in the day, so we kind of knew what was going to happen, with the launch we were going to see. And when those two, Miss Weber and Mr. Atchison, got up, I was so impressed. They did their presentation in tandem, so the both of them on a small stage at the same time, and they kind of went back and forth. They gave a little background about themselves, and when Miss Weber she had me hooked when she started talking about she had worked on the F-22 Raptor. That's one of my favorite jets in all of aviation.
That's amazing.
She had me right there, but I was really impressed with her talking about the interior design aspect that she was a part of for the Starliner capsule. And then,
one thing, I'm going to interrupt you there. One thing I really was impressed too is, again, her title is she's like the crew and cargo accommodations lead. So she's basically more or less responsible for so many things, but also even as down as the seats, making sure the seats would fit different variety of people. And she had this wonderful image she showed up on the screen of her height, and she, kind of a modest stature and height, just like I am, next to a really tall person, and they both had to fit in the same seats, and she takes care of that. So I was really impressed with that.
Yeah, I thought she was saying that the design of the seat, there's like a basic structure there, and then the astronauts themselves, they scan their backs, and then they 3D print an insert. So basically, the seat conforms specifically to their back only, when they're in. So it's pretty incredible. And then Mr. Atchison, he said he grew up right here in Florida and watched shuttle launches from his backyard, and now the guy is directing launches and recovery and hopes to be an astronaut himself. I mean, that's a pretty incredible path from dreaming as a kid to the position he's in now.
You know, it really is. And I think their passion came through too. Because I remember talking to both of them briefly afterwards. And even Melanie was like, she was so excited and passionate. They both were, but she was also, nervous about the mission too. And she said,
Sure.
if any of you pray, please pray for this, pray for this mission. And I guess just seeing just how the Boeing people, just seeing the human side of how hard and how much energy that they've all put towards this mission and what they do was just really impressive.
Absolutely. I agree.
And the next step, though, was really cool. They took us to this center where they showed us the Airstream Astrovan 2.
Oh, yeah.
And I have this awesome shot that I'll show for those of you watching on YouTube right now of you sitting in one of the seats.
Yeah.
What was going through your mind on this van? Tell us a little bit more about that.
I tell you what, man, when I got in that thing, you could tell that they did everything to the 10th degree. The design of this thing was all about the comfort of the people that will be riding in it. The astronauts that will be riding in these Starliner capsules, right? And the seats themselves, the guy mentioned, I don't remember exactly what he said, but they're super plush and really fine leather. And there was plenty of room. No seat was right next to the other one. There was plenty of room on either side of them for whatever they're going to have with them, And
Right.
I just thought they really took their time designing this vehicle because they intend to use it a lot, and that's exciting to me because that means they're gonna send people to space from right there at Kennedy.
Oh, it was so exciting. And then that was parked right outside this wonderful museum-like experience that we went into. And they had this wonderful Starliner cockpit simulation and other stuff. What was your impression of that facility? I was really blown away.
I thought it was pretty cool, man. I don't think that is I think it was set up specifically for like VIPs and guests of Boeing to give them an overview of the Starliner and kind of show the history of Boeing's cooperation with NASA throughout the history of spaceflight there, and I just thought they did a really good job. It was an exhibit worthy of any museum I've ever been to, and they had that cockpit simulation, which I didn't try, but I kind of peeked over the shoulder of a few of you guys that were on it, and it was the real deal, man. It was pretty cool.
Oh, it's amazing. Again, they just do everything to the nth degree, and I love that. Right after that. I guess I was also impressed. Even the lunch that we had, you said this in your blog that I'm going to link to in the show notes for this episode. But one thing I think you were impressed about was just the variety of people that were inside the cafeteria. Tell us more about that.
Right, sure. So in this blog that Chuck's referring to, I earlier in the day, coming into my first NASA social, so I didn't know exactly what to expect. And I had a little bit of that imposter syndrome, meaning I wasn't so sure I deserved to be on this thing. And, but I kind of pushed that aside in my mind. I had to come to terms with the fact that this was maybe a once in a lifetime opportunity, and I wanted to take advantage of it. Yep. So I hadn't thought about it much since we had left registration that morning. And like you said, we got to lunch and we ate in a common cafeteria there. It's kind of directly across the street from the vehicle assembly building. Right. And we were all sitting there having lunch. And I think you and I were sitting next to each other, and there were 3 or 4, a lady from Aerojet Rocketdyne and a few other people were there. And everybody was kind of saying, what they did, what they were involved in, and how they came to be at this event. And while this conversation is going on, I'm kind of looking around the room, and I can see guys that are, like the executive types. They're suit and tie guys, and they're sitting next to guys clearly sweat every day in their job. Right. They're out there in the field doing whatever it is. Electricians, engineers, technicians, all these groups of people, and it kind of clicked in my head right then that this whole thing, supporting space exploration and NASA's role in it and our role in it, communicating their story and all of that is not for a specific group of people. It's for everyone, know, and that like having that revelation in that little moment, I didn't say anything out loud then. I was just thinking, in my head while this conversation at the lunch table was going on, and I'm looking around, I thought, this is for everybody. It doesn't have to be for a selected group. And once I had that those feelings of inadequacy or whatever you want to call it, they kind of went away, and I really enjoyed the day.
See, I think that was amazing. Space is for everybody, and it takes a huge team. People can't emphasize it enough. Astronauts are incredible, engineers are incredible, but it takes everybody, all steps, all facets to make that happen. We did have a nice trip. I'm going to kind of breeze over our trip to the Atlas Space Operations Center. I'll show a picture of Mission Control, which is incredible. But let's get to Launch Complex 41. This is where we saw Starliner on the pad. What was going through your head when our bus got closer and closer and closer and came right up to the security fence?
Before we, my assumption was that we were going to stop. The pad is in an elevated position from sea level, right? Mm-hmm. Most of them out there are, and my thought was that we would stop somewhere on the lower end of that mound and kind of glance up there and be, let's say, 500 yards away or more from this rocket, and that would be as close as we got, and we would have opportunities to take pictures, like through the fence itself. Mm-hmm. But the bus, got closer and closer, and then we turned on the street or the road that goes right up to where it's the same path that the rocket travels from the vertical integration building up to the pad itself. Right. And we pulled right up to the fence, and I thought, man, we're 100 yards from this rocket that's launching tomorrow morning. Yeah. And then they opened the fence up, and so you've got this 180-degree unobstructed view of this rocket, and it was incredible, man.
Oh, I thought that was it really blew me away too. And sort of the icing on the cake is, as we're admiring this close-up view of the rocket that was going to launch on the very next day, we had some pretty special people from NASA show up. We had a couple astronauts. We had Butch Wilmore. We had Colonel Bob Cabana. We had NASA Deputy Administrator, Jim Morehard at first. Mm-hmm. They all showed up. What was, you mentioned something too. I mean, same thing as me. When we sort of see the blue flight suits, we know, hey, there's astronauts, and our heads immediately turned. And these guys, they didn't just walk by. They came up, started engaging with us. And you have this wonderful video that I'm going to show right now of, I was fortunate to talk to Colonel Bob Cabana. I was asking about micrometeorites. So here he is just talking about his experiences of that in the space shuttle.
They replaced 3 or 4 windows every flight. There was one on my third flight that was over on the pilot side that was a starburst about that big, and I said, no, it's on his side, I won't worry about it. But the orbiter had 3 1-inch panes of glass. There was a pressure pane, an inner protective pane, and then an outer thermal pane. So it was that thermal pane that was getting replaced.
How did you get into this? I mean, what motivated you?
So I just wanted to fly jets ever since I was 5 years old, and I was fortunate enough to get in the Naval Academy, and that allowed me to become a pilot in the Marine Corps, a naval aviator. I chose the Marine Corps because I could get to flight school sooner than I could if my class, when we graduated, they were sending everybody to sea for a year before they could go to flight school. And I said, a year on a destroyer, 6 months in Quantico, I'm going to be a Marine. I need to fly sooner. But, I was a naval aviator in the Marine Corps, and then I became a test pilot, and that's what allowed me to be an astronaut. But I never dreamed. I mean, I held astronauts in such high esteem, but it was a progressive thing. One thing led to another.
So what was your impression of just the astronauts and the special guests that we had showing up?
I tell you what, man, we were all focused on that rocket, and then kind of behind us, we saw that bus pull up, or a van, whatever it was, and you're when a vehicle pulls up behind you, you kind of glance that way, but when they step out and they've got this color blue flight jacket on, right away, hey, that's an astronaut, or most people that are into space even a little bit recognize that, and I was like you said, I was expecting, okay, this is a photo op, but they came through and they shook hands and they had personal conversations with anybody that was willing to have one. Mm-hmm. And that impressed me because that to me felt like they cared that both of those guys, Butch spent 6 months at the ISS.
Right.
Colonel Bob is the director of KSC now. Yes. And they're clearly still passionate about the cause and what they do for a living, Yeah. I was impressed by that.
I thought it was neat too. And if that wasn't enough, then we turn the other way and NASA Administrator Jim Bridenstine comes up.
That really shocked me because they sent the deputy director out there, and I thought, wow, that's pretty impressive. They sent, high-level guy out here to mingle with us NASA social guys, and yeah, when he showed up, I thought, wow, he's the top. The buck stops with that dude, So
Yep.
I was impressed with that. And
Yeah, that was neat too.
same as the other guys, he was super friendly and engaging, and talked with anybody that wanted to talk to him. He got up and he talked a little bit about why commercialization of our program is important, and why what percentage of the federal budget belongs to NASA, and why they argue for the amount that they do, and all that kind of stuff. And it is important because he made a good point that, like, beyond communications technology, there's so much that we use on a day-to-day life that is a direct result of the research performed by astronauts at the ISS and the shuttle and beyond,
Yeah, that was true too. And I got to admit, starstruck is definitely the word that sort of came to mind. And
Sure.
I was so impressed. I actually, Jim Bridenstine, I had the wonderful opportunity to actually meet him in person in November. We actually went to NASA headquarters and did an interview that we have on our spacejourney.com site. But while we were talking to him, while he was talking to us, I should say, Tori Bruno, the head of ULA, was actually mingling with some of our crowd too. But unfortunately, I was looking the other direction, so I didn't get to see Tori until he was away in the distance, and he gave a nice wave to me, which is wonderful on that. But yeah, that was amazing. After that, I hate to take us away from the launch pad, but after that, we went to one of my favorite facilities of this visit was the Boeing's Commercial Crew and Cargo Processing Facility.
Sure.
Tell us more about that. What was your impression going into that?
I tell you what, man, we pull up outside, and there's this mural that is, has the Starliner spacecraft in Earth orbit, and it covers the entire side of this building.
Right.
And I was familiar with the building from its role in the space shuttle program.
Uh-huh.
If you look at the side of this building, it has these wide bay doors that are wide enough to accommodate the wings of the shuttle, and it's got the little notch at the top for the fin to come through the building.
Exactly.
And the mural is across that side of the building, so you can still see the doors there, and they still utilize them to move their spacecraft in and out. But that was cool. But I had zero idea what we would see inside. And
Me
man,
too.
when we went inside, I was more than impressed. I can tell you that.
It blew us away because they told us no close-up shots, but they let us take some photos,
Sure.
and we saw the next capsule that's being prepared for their first crewed flight, which is
Right.
going to be amazing. We saw the capsule from earlier this year, or I should say late 2019, the capsule that did the abort test successfully. Right. We also saw the new service module and a heat shield for that. So it was truly an impressive facility.
Yeah, I was blown away when we came in, and they had the clean room set up there where they were working on the capsule, and the exterior panels were away, and you could see all of the tubing and wiring. Like it's miles and miles of wire and tubing to support that stuff, and you realize, you kind of know, I guess, but when you see it firsthand, you realize the complexities of what's going on, and it really gives you a better appreciation of the work that goes into that.
It was amazing, and not only that facility, but I understand probably your biggest thrill early in the day. We went to the vehicle assembly building. What was going through your head on that building? Tell me all about it.
My favorite part of the day. So I saw that building, when I was a child. I was on vacation with my parents, and we passed the building and on just a bus tour. And back then, the shuttle program was active. Nobody was going in there, nobody from the public. But they slowed down, and then they're giving you the facts and just the sheer volume of the thing, and knowing that Saturn V rockets were assembled there, and at that point the shuttle was being assembled there, and all that. As a kid, that's what hooked me, man, because it's just that impressive of a structure. Right. And so I kind of had an idea based on a little online videos and things I'd watched that we might go there. And when we went, we had a very short window, right? He told us we had 15 minutes because our schedule for the day had gotten condensed because we'd lingered other places longer and so on.
Right.
But when we went inside there, you're on the low end. So it's got a low bay and a high bay, and we come in the low end, and the ceiling's 200 feet over your head.
Right.
In the low end, right?
Yeah.
And it just the interior volume of that space is unreal. And you look into the high end, and then the ceiling goes up another 300 feet. It's mind blowing.
It was cool. And that day itself, I mean, it's just amazing how much adrenaline is pumping through your body. And by that night, I know we were all exhausted. And adding to the matter, not that it was a problem at all, but the next day for the launch, we basically had to be at Kennedy Space Center by 4 in the morning, 4 a.m. for this launch. We got there. Everything went off without a hitch. We went to the media site to watch the launch.
Right.
What was going through your mind then?
I was excited. I'd had the opportunity to watch a few other launches, but obviously never from that site. And it was cool because I don't know if you've seen. I'm sure you have the Apollo 11 documentary that came out earlier this year.
Yeah.
It's got all this great high definition footage that they dug up from the archives, and some of the shots there is the crowd of people, back in 1969, standing on that same lawn we are, watching, getting ready to watch Neil Armstrong and Michael Collins and Buzz Aldrin launch to the moon.
Right.
And just, I guess that's the kind of feeling I had all day long. Is like I'm standing in a place that is so historically significant that it's kind of surreal. So.
Yeah, especially even that big countdown clock was right there. We could walk right up to it if we wanted to. We didn't want to get the camera's view of it. But it was impressive, and the launch itself was just beautiful and breathtaking. I mean, it was twilight barely, and as the rocket ascended, we could just, again, you can feel that wonderful vibrations going through your chest. It was a little bit windy that day, but it amazingly calmed down right before launch. It was just beautiful timing, beautiful launch itself. I
believe so many things happened exactly the way they had to get that rocket off the ground. Like I said, the weather calmed down. It was an instantaneous window. So if it didn't launch immediately, it was scrubbed, and my schedule wasn't going to allow me to stay and come another day. So I would have had to miss it. But everything worked out, and right at 6:36, it left the ground.
Oh, that was amazing. Yeah, I'm so excited, and I know there was obviously a problem getting to the space station, but all in all, the mission landed successfully just a couple of days later. I'm just so excited about that, and again, it was just getting to know the Boeing people and every one of them that took time out of their schedule to give us such a wonderful experience. You just can't help but want to be a cheerleader for them and just kind of root for them for success, for getting people back up to space from U.S. soil.
I agree, man. You never want to hear the word anomaly when you're talking about a launch or anything in space travel, but they are a reality, right? They happen. Going to space is not easy. And the people we met all day, the day before and that morning, the people from Boeing that we dealt with and anybody involved with this, you could tell like this was their life at that moment. They had invested so much of themselves in that. And for it to have an issue, I'm sure was way more disappointing to them than it would ever be to you and I. But they were able to, like you said, they were able to do some of the flight checks, while it was in orbit for a few days. They didn't get all the stuff done they wanted to do, but they landed the craft safely. Everything performed on that end like it was supposed to. And I believe that the next time that they launch it, it'll go off without a hitch.
Oh, that sounds great. Jason, again, I can't thank you enough for taking time out. Can you tell us more about the podcast that you help with and how people can find out more about that?
Sure. You can check it out at floridasinking.com. Florida is Sinking is the name of the podcast. And I got involved with those guys. There's two hosts, and they're from the other coast in Florida, closer to Kennedy than I am. I'm in Tampa. But I was just a listener. I found the podcast online, and I thought, it was a great podcast. And it's comedic, and they just kind of poke fun at all the crazy news stories and stuff that comes out of Florida. But we also talk a little bit, or they also talked a little bit. I've been on the show a few times about life in Florida and the good and the bad and all that stuff that comes with that. Well, Kennedy Space Center is right in our back door, right? So This is part of our life here, and I see rockets launching sometimes during the middle of the workday. I can look off to the east and see a rocket going up, So it's a part of our lives, and I wanted to go experience that and really get a better look at it and communicate that to this audience. Say, hey, this is right in your back door. Check it out. It's right here. So
excellent. Well, Jason, thanks again for taking time to join us today. Really appreciate it.
Absolutely. Thanks, Chuck.
your space journey.
Wow, we are so excited about launching Americans once again from U.S. soil. We're hoping that 2020 is the year to make that happen. We're not sure if it's going to be Boeing first or SpaceX. We're excited either way. If you'd like to follow updates for Starliner, just go to their website at starlinerupdates.com. If you'd like to view our behind-the-scenes look at SpaceX's Crew Dragon demonstration earlier in 2019, just go to our website at onlinecoffeebreak.com/82. If you'd like to learn more about the commercial program in general from NASA, just go to their website at nasa.gov/commercial crew. I want to thank you for taking time out of your schedule to join us today. Really do appreciate it. If you can share the love by giving us a 5-star rating on Apple Podcasts, or just liking this video if you're watching YouTube, or whatever podcast application you listen to, we really appreciate it. We'll see you next time. God bless.